Welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending ACEEE's 2022 International Symposium on Energy Efficiency. I am Steve Nadell, Executive Director at ACEEE, and I'll be kicking off today's event and will be moderating today's opening panel. Before we begin, let's start with a few quick housekeeping announcements. We will be recording this webinar and making it available to all registrants within a few business days. We'll also be making the slides available to all registrants. Also, I want to note that the speaker presentations will be available on the symposium landing page if attendees want to follow along on their own computers. To ask a question during the webinar, please type it out in the chat and I will read the questions at the end of the presentations and remarks. So we are excited to be releasing our international scorecard today. It's a particularly timely time given the Ukrainian war, the high price of oil, gas, and natural gas. Energy efficiency can be an important part of addressing these issues. The less energy we use, the more we can stretch available supplies, whether it's in the US or internationally, to help meet needs, soften demand so we can moderate prices and replace Russian oil and gas. I'd also note, and if you look at the first slide I have here, energy efficiency is also a critical component of efforts to address global climate change. This slide comes from a report by the IEA on their net zero emission scenarios, showing it is possible to get to zero net emissions by 2050 with major reductions in all the sectors, electricity, buildings, transport, industry. In order to do this, they figure we're going to need to reduce emissions even almost enough to get to zero, but then we'll have to do a little bit of direct air capture, which is shown on the right. If we can go to the next slide, energy efficiency is a critical part of this. As you can see, varying by sector, energy efficiency is close to half of the needed reductions that we'll do. And ACEEE likewise has very similar analysis for the US. Now, I wanted to thank all of our speakers. I also wanted to, in particular, thank the co-host of this, Daikin USA, for sponsoring this event. Daikin is a leading global company on developing and marketing high-efficiency HVAC equipment, such as heat pumps. And here to also welcome us is Charlie McCrudden, their Director of Federal Affairs. Charlie, over to you.
Yep, thank you, Steve. And I want to welcome all the participants today. Daikin US is proud to sponsor today's International Symposium on Energy Efficiency, and we are pleased to be part of the release of the 2022 International Energy Efficiency Scorecard. We hope this benchmarking report on progress made over the last 4 years keeps governments and policymakers moving in the right direction to improve energy efficiency and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Daikin is a global leader in sustainable innovation and technology. As many of you may know, Daikin is the world's largest manufacturer of heating, air conditioning, and refrigeration equipment. Daikin's heat pump technology is a key solution to improving the energy use in buildings while reducing both direct and indirect greenhouse gas emissions. Daikin's engineers have been developing and implementing new technologies for many years. Inverter compressor technologies in heat pumps and chillers reduce the amount of energy necessary to heat and cool indoor spaces, especially when coupled with demand response capabilities. Daikin's passion is to solve global environmental challenges with innovative products and solutions. We are firmly committed to the twin goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and reducing energy use in buildings. To achieve these goals, we have committed to sharing our energy-saving technologies with the world. We believe that by sharing Daikin's technologies, we can contribute to advancing our collective goals of improving the environment, promoting sustainability, and providing consumers with superior products and comfort. As the only HVACR manufacturer that also produces refrigerants, our research and development in refrigerant technology has helped move much of the world to the widespread use of lower global warming potential refrigerants that are less harmful to the environment. We find ourselves at a now or never moment in the global efforts to address climate change. At Daikin, we are grateful for our partnerships with ACEEE, and we hope to continue to contribute to a sharing of best practices and policies that help us all meet this challenge. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Charlie. Again, we appreciate all your help in developing the program and sponsoring this conference, and we'll hear from Charlie and some other Daikin people later in this event. But now I'd like to introduce our plenary panel. First up, we'll have Sagarika Subramanian, who is a senior research analyst at ACEEE and the lead author of this year's International Scorecard. Sagarika's biography and that of all of our other speakers can be found on the International Symposium webpage. So I won't be doing long readings of bios. You can look at them there. But with that, Sagarika, please take it away to talk about our results.
Great, thank you, Steve. Now I'll just wait for Nick to pop up the slides. Brilliant, thank you. So thank you again to all of our speakers and attendees for joining us today for ACEEE's 2022 International Symposium on Energy Efficiency. As Steve said, my name is Sagarika Subramanian, and I'm a senior research analyst at ACEEE. Next slide, please. So before I dive into the results, I kind of wanted to give some background and context for our international scorecard. ACEEE has published this report since 2012, and the 2022 report is the 5th edition of the International Scorecard. The International Scorecard has evolved over the years, but has always been intended as a means to present a basic comparison of energy use and efficiency policy efforts in top energy consuming countries. The International Scorecard is also a way to identify best practices and policies that countries can implement to take advantage of untapped efficiency potential. Next slide, please. As for our methodology, we evaluated 25 of the largest energy consuming countries in the world, and we identified those countries by using 2018 data from the US Energy Information Administration. And to kind of give you an idea of who the top energy consumers were, China was at the top of the list, followed by the US, and then Russia in terms of total primary energy consumption. For the report, we used 36 metrics to evaluate each country's national commitment to energy efficiency, as well as its efficiency policies and performance in the buildings, industry, and transportation sectors, as you can see on the slide here. Countries could earn up to 25 points in each sector, so the maximum possible score for each country is 100. And I wanted to note that for a given metric within the section, we awarded the highest score available to at least one country, which means that countries have the potential to earn a perfect score of 100. But in a few slides, we'll see if they did. Next slide, please. So this is a snapshot of the type of metrics that we included in the national effort section in particular. So as you can see, they are a mix of policy metrics that rate the presence of a particular policy and performance metrics that evaluate energy use. And this year we split the point allocation 60-40 between policy and performance metrics across all 4 sections. And in terms of data limitations, for the most part, we made only modest adjustments to raw data because we are essentially trying to enable basic comparisons across countries. Next slide, please. And without further ado, I am going to move on to the results of the 2022 International Scorecard. Next slide, please. Okay, here are the results. So France got first place this year for the very first time in our scorecard with a score of 74.5 points out of 100. The United Kingdom was a close second with 72.5 points. And as you can see, rounding out the top 5 were Germany and the Netherlands, which tied for 3rd place, and Italy in 5th. I'll quickly note that the United States saw no change in ranking from 2018. It came in 10th place out of 25 countries in the scorecard. And I'll provide some more details on the results in the next couple of slides. Next slide. So here's a map depicting the results of the 2022 scorecard. I think this is kind of a great visualization to see the geography of the countries included. And you can kind of more easily see who the top scorers were. High performing countries are mainly in Europe, as shown in the dark green color. And I'll note that Asian countries such as Japan, China, and Taiwan also scored within the top 10. And I already mentioned that the US came in 10th place. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, France scored first overall and displaced Germany and Italy from the top spot in 2018. And a little bit about France. France has a bonus-malus system that finances bonus payments for electric vehicles by levying fees on emission-intensive vehicles. The country also spends approximately 3% more on rail development and maintenance than it does on roads, indicating an effort to ensure that rail is a reliable option for both passengers and freight movement. France also performs well on its building sector policies, with ambitious building retrofit programs and national mandatory energy codes for residential and commercial buildings. But I will let our next speaker delve more into France's efforts. So several other European nations also performed well in this year's rankings, as you saw on the map, in part because European countries benefit from EU policies or European Union policies and are also better at collecting energy data. And as I mentioned, Japan, Taiwan, and China ranked within the top 10 this year. As for the most improved country, that would be the Netherlands, which moved from 7th place to 3rd place this year. And the Netherlands put together an impressive suite of policies and programs to target economy-wide energy consumption. Its ambitious 2019 climate agreement directs the country to cut greenhouse gas emissions almost by half by 2030. And acknowledges energy efficiency as an essential tool to meet these goals. The country has adopted building performance standards for office buildings and leads the pack in the proportion of new vehicle sales that are electric. I also wanted to mention that although Saudi Arabia ranked close to last in this edition, it still gained more points than any other country, partly due to its updated building codes and improved data availability for certain metrics in the building section. And finally, Egypt made its first appearance in our scorecard this year. It ranked 20th with a score of 31.5 points. Next slide. So here are some sector-specific trends and opportunities for improvement. In the national effort section, the Netherlands and Germany tied for first place. And a little bit about Germany. To coordinate with the European Union's current energy efficiency target, Germany has a broad energy efficiency strategy as part of its energy transition and offers multi-sector loans and tax programs to spur investment in energy efficient technologies. The Netherlands has a Dutch national energy and climate plan to meet the EU's energy efficiency target as well. Now, the Netherlands also nabbed the top spot for building related efforts and earned points in part for its comprehensive building energy codes that cover a broad range of technical elements, its mandatory building retrofit policies, and more. Japan took first place in the industry category due to a mix of regulatory measures, voluntary actions, and financial incentives to successfully encourage industrial energy efficiency. And finally, France led the transportation category by showing a dedication towards deploying fuel-efficient vehicles and investment in more efficient modes of transport like public transit. So please tune in for our breakout sessions to learn a lot more about these countries' efforts. I did want to note that there is significant room for improvement for all countries, particularly in the transportation category, where the average score was 9.5 out of 25. And to address this, countries can promote policies that encourage vehicle efficiency, advanced vehicles, and improve transportation systems as well. And A little mention about the bottom ranking countries, that they certainly do have plenty of opportunity to build energy efficiency into their continued economic growth. But I do want to caveat that some of these results reflect the challenges that we faced with getting data. Next. So in conclusion, no country achieved a perfect overall score or perfect score within the sections, signifying that there are areas for improvement for all countries in the scorecard. We know that energy efficiency is an important tool to address climate change, to create jobs and improve public health, and countries will need to step up their efforts to make progress on climate goals. And importantly, as Steve mentioned earlier, energy efficiency will be critical for European countries that are aiming to reduce reliance on Russian gas and oil due to Russia's recent invasion of Ukraine. And we hope that countries will use this report to learn from one another by emulating best policies and practices. Specifically, more developed nations have a responsibility to lead by example and implement ambitious policies that will further reduce energy consumption and emissions. And emerging economies have the opportunity to grow sustainably by implementing policies in their industrial buildings and transportation sectors. So before I wrap up, I just want to take another minute and thank all of our panelists and moderators for joining us today. I think it'll be a great event. And with that, I look forward to your follow-up questions and comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sagarika. So if you do have a question for Sagarika or any of the other speakers, please enter it in the chat. The ones that are easy to answer, we're trying just to answer in the chat, but some of the ones that will be broader interest, we will ask the speakers to respond to in the Q&A session towards the end of this session. But as Sagarika said, France was the #1 country with a broad set of policies that really help advance energy efficiency. Here to tell us about it is Dr. Didier Busboff. He is an economist with more than 30 years of experience on energy demand analysis and energy efficiency policies and evaluation. He's at ADEME, the French Environment and Management Agency, where among other things, he's in charge of international studies and coordinating several international projects on energy efficiency indicators. The floor is yours, Didier.
Thank you. Good morning and good afternoon to all our 300 audience. It's a great pleasure to present a selection of some high impact measures that were in France. And what is interesting is that we are accelerating the deployment of efficiency even during this COVID crisis and with the Ukrainian war. So we are in a good dynamic. Just to illustrate that, the budget of this French agency on ecological transition has been multiplied by 3 in 1 year. So this is an interesting period for implementing energy efficiency. Next one. So we, as it was mentioned by Nigel, I am coordinating an important project on energy efficiency monitoring, and we have also a scoreboard which is called the Odyssey Mur scoreboard, and one of the speakers, Barbara, which is also here, we have developed a scoreboard which is more or less similar to the ACEEE scoreboard, with more emphasis on the impact of policies. So I may say that we are a little bit more sophisticated because we have more data in Europe. And the main result of our scoreboard is I can confirm that France is ranking quite well, since at the European level, we are #4. But if you look in your list of countries, it's the largest country, we are the first country in Europe, the large country in Europe. And there are also good reasons that Estonia or Romania are well scored due to they are good in trends because they start to implement policy very late. So it's more difficult for France, Germany, UK, etc. to improve efficiency compared to the state participant of the energy efficiency market. Next one. So you can also see that we are good in policy implementation rather than in trends. And I confirm that we rank number 1 or 2 for transportation. So it seems that our transport policy seems to be a good practice over Europe and over the world. It's nice to implement policies, but what is important is that we deliver. And this graph, it's also again based on this DCMUR project. This is an energy efficiency index. It's an indicator which is more, let's say, close to real energy efficiency, like energy intensity. You can see the development for France from the last 20 years. And on average, we improve our technical efficiency by 1% per year. What is also interesting is to see that there are differences according to the sector. And we have a better result in transport than in the service sector, for instance. But something that we have to warn is that there is a slowing down, not only in France, but many European countries since 2014. So there is a sort of slowing down of energy efficiency improvement, despite we have more and more policies. So this is a question that arises in our network of experts at European level. And I stop, of course, in 2019 because after the analysis is more complex due to COVID. Next one. So we can translate that trend in the energy efficiency index in terms of energy savings. And more or less, we have saved 12% compared to in 2019 compared to the 2000 reference year. And you can see here the difference by sector, and it's clear that this is a residential sector which has contribute or generate the more important amount of energy saving. The opposite, the service sector deliver very few saving, and is certainly linked to the fact that we are lacking interesting policies in the service sector, but as you will see later on, it will change in the next future. Next one, you can also see, but you should have good eyes, slowing down of the amount of saving to this 5 last year. In fact, in the scoreboard of ACEEE, you have seen that the 5 first countries are European. And there is a good reason for that, is that we have a certain homogeneity among European countries because the bulk of our policies are linked to the implementation of EU directive. And I list here 5 or 6 important energy efficiency directives which shape our policy mixed implementation even at national level. And finally, the difference it's between European countries, it's of course the way we are transposing these coordinated European policies, and also to have maybe extra national policies. And for example, the bonus malus that was mentioned in the introduction, it's typically a national policy which go beyond the energy efficiency, the different directives. So I put here the first most important one is the energy efficiency directive, where we have a target on energy demand, and we have to save mandatory 1.5% saving from policies and measures. We have the Energy Performance Building Directive, which forces all the European countries to implement a building code and to reinforce this building code every 5 years. And in that respect, it seems that the French building code, it's one of the most stringent in European, which was not the case 10 years ago. We have the energy emission trading scheme, So of course, it's not exactly efficiency. It's also take into account renewables and substitution, but part of this emission trading scheme is made through energy efficiency investment. We have the eco design, which is a directive on, for the moment, 31 minimum energy performance standard on electrical appliances, ICT, and so on. We have also label directive and so on. So we have a lot of European directive, and this is why many European countries are more or less the same type of performances. Next one. Just to illustrate that, this is the last policy I mentioned, the CO2 program standard for cars, what we call the Volkswagen indicator for different reasons. And what is interesting is to illustrate this issue of COVID. You can see the green bar, it's the improvement in percentage of the liter per 100 kilometer for the last 2019-2020. And you can see that there is a huge improvement compared to the previous period, 2014-2019. So it means, and this is a very important message for me, that COVID has not slowing down policies which are linked to standard or obligation. And it means that even if we have a change in energy prices, the fact that we have a lot of mandatory standards help us to have a counter-cycle effect on the different crises. Next one, in France, it's running quite well on that. A lot of policies are changing. When I say right now, I say yesterday. Again, we have a new announcement from the government. So from the last year and the beginning of this year, we have a lot of change in our policy due to this COVID, post-COVID recovery plan. And also some energy efficient plan linked to the Ukraine war. So, it's not a joke, it's a multiplication of the public funding by a factor 2 or 3. And here, we call it this recovery plan France Relance. And this is different topics where we have this recovery plan. And the first one, for example, it's a decarbonization fund for industry. And so there are 600 million euros for 1 year, for 2 years dedicated to this new recovery plan for that target. I will not go in detail, but you can see that clearly there is an opportunity for energy efficiency implementation due to this recovery plan. Next one. The most important, you mentioned our transport policies, but really the most important policy in France, which is a cross-cutting policy, it's what we call the white certificate. So I don't know if you are familiar to that instrument. I think 14 countries in Europe have this type of obligation. It's a sort of schizophrenic instrument, I may say. It's an obligation by the government to energy supplier, which are required to achieve energy efficiency action to their customer. And so they have, in case of France, a pluriannual target, and they have to make action. They can make audits, they can support, they can take advantage of other financing scheme to make energy saving into their customer. So here there is a sort of diagram to explain that. I will not go in detail. What is important in case of France is that we have a white certificate market, which is not the case of all the obligation. Secondly, we are covering all the sectors. There are some of the countries which are also using obligation. They just cover residential or industry. In our case, and I think this is quite unique, we cover residential, all building, industry, agriculture, and transportation. In the interest of having that, it's increase the white certificate market. Next one. As I mentioned, this program is not a joke. It's corresponds. So we start 15 years ago with a small objective, and now we are reaching 2,500 terawatt-hour CUMAC. It's a special unit. But more or less, you see, we multiply by a factor 50 the objective of this obligation. And the obligation starting from this year, 2022, is correspond to 1.5% of the total financial consumption. So through an obligation, the government pushes the utilities to save 1.5% final consumption in their customers. And the second interesting thing in our scheme is that part of this what obligation should be dedicated to fuel poverty, which is orange. And this share is increasing. And I can say that we make ex post evaluation, and in fact, the UGTs overpass the objective on fuel poverty. Don't know if I will have a question on that, but I think this is a very interesting tool to that. And this obligation scheme is linked to the Energy Efficiency Directive for European speakers, which are familiar to that. It was Article 7 and now Article 8. Next one. So this is the most important. See, and you can see the amount of money which is behind. It's more than $4 billion per year, but it's also motivate around 17 billion of euro for the over a period in terms of investment. So this is the most important tool in France, which may explain our good ranking. Next one. Next. So it's some figures. So you see the dynamic of this program. Here you can see the development of the white certificate and the price of the white certificate. So it's in orange and blue. And you see that it has been fluctuating, and it's around 8 euro per megawatt CUMAC. And what is interesting is to compare that to the penalty that the government will apply to the supplier if they don't reach the target, which is 15 euros. So there are still a room for that market. And this market also, it's interesting to give a price of energy efficiency. We know the price for oil, gas, and so on, but in fact, it's difficult to know the price of efficiency, and this scheme reveals the price of energy efficiency. Next one.
Okay. Didier, if you could take maybe 5 more minutes, you may have to skip a few.
Next one. So here I will insist on different type of policy, obligation, and some subsidies. So this one, it's an obligation to retrofit for the private building. So it's a progressive retrofit obligation. And you can see, so it's a target of 40% an improvement every year to 2028, where the goal is to eliminate all the submersibles. So what is important is that this is an obligation to the landlord and the owners to cut their consumption until 330 kilowatt-hour per square meter. Next one. In the household, we have also a grant which accelerates the energy renovation, and the grant is around 20,000 euro. And for fuel poor household, it's more or less cover all the costs of the subsidy scheme, the retrofitting amount of. And you see that it's accelerating, and we have around 650,000 renovation grant. And at just the beginning of the year, we have already 100,000 grants. So even if we are in a COVID period, this scheme worked very well, and it's complementary to the white certificate scheme and the obligation. So it's a policy mixed in the building sector, which encompasses obligation and subsidies. Next one, which is certainly the most innovative one, at least in Europe, we have a mandatory reporting and target for large building in the service or tertiary sector. So all the large building has to improve their consumption by 40% in the year 2040. Next one. So this is an obligation, and there is, this is a calendar, you can see there is a penalty at the end, and it's, I think it's maybe next one. The Anglo-Saxon way, we fix target, next one, and we fix, you can see some penalties, around 7,000 euros, but also it will be a name and shame system where we put in front of the date name of the service sector a sort of label, you are good, bad, or medium. So this is an obligation. I think it's very rare to have an obligation in the service sector to reach a mandatory target and a mandatory yearly reporting. Next one. So now the bonus malus, I will be very simple. The bonus, it's for me a very clever system because for the government it's fiscally neutral. We put a bonus to all. First, we start by a malus to all the non-efficient SUV or four wheels, and sometimes you go up to 30,000 euros. If you have a Porsche, if you buy a new Porsche, you have 13,000 euro malus. And with this revenue of all this malus, we finance, so it's a bonus, we finance the purchasing of new efficient cars, mainly electric cars now. And you see the maximum of the bonus, it's 20 grams of CO2 per kilometer, it's more or less electric cars. And it's a 7,000 euro bonus, so it's a quite impressive bonus. And what is important, next one, is that that system really works and change the market. I will not explain, but you can see here at the bottom the development of the share of cars according to the label, and you can see that really the bonus malus has, first of all, decreased the CO2 consumption of new cars, but also change the market, and we have less and less FNG labels and with motors. So this bonus malus change the market. Next one. Just the last sector in industry, as I mentioned, we have a Decarbonization Fund, which is going through the post-COVID recovery plan. Will not go in detail. What is the important message is that this recovery plan, it's an opportunity to engage countries in the energy transition. You can see that the percentage of age depends on the size of the country, of the companies, and we make more effort for the small business companies with the subsidies of 50%. Next one. Next one. This is my conclusion. So the policy mix is changing. We are making more emphasis on household than the other sector right now. And we are thinking now to go further, to shift from, as an institutional, we are a public body, don't forget that. We are thinking about the next step of efficiency, which is sufficiency. And here we have recently published 4 scenarios which reach the target of zero carbon in 2050. And the first scenario, S1, is on sufficiency. S2, it's on efficiency, on pure energy efficiency. So we see that, I think it's important message that some governments and some institutions start to think about implementing sufficiency policies. So efficiency, energy efficiency, it's important, but as far as we have to abate CO2, we have to go to sufficiency. Thank you for attention.
Okay, thank you very much, DDA. As Sagarika noted, the US came in 10th, right in the middle of the pack. But I know the US government has many plans to improve energy efficiency. So here to talk a bit about that is Dr. Kathleen Hogan from the US Department of Energy. She has a more than 20-year career as a federal executive at EPA and DOE. And she currently serves as the Principal Deputy Undersecretary for Infrastructure at DOE. So Kathleen, we're ready for your remarks.
Well, thank you, Steve, and thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to be here and talk about efficiency, climate change, building back better and quickly. And I just want to begin with congratulations to ACEEE and this new report. As people have noted, it really does help us take stock and aspire to do more. And really congratulations to France and the other countries on this recognition who truly are doing great things to put energy efficiency to work. I think we all agree these are really crucial efforts for so many reasons. Our economic, environmental, climate, and global energy security futures as world events continue to drive home. From the US side, I think it's clear that the US is back in the climate fight and that energy efficiency is critical to our success. You know, if we just look back to last year, the US set a target of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030. Along with some other very important clean energy goals. And the administration has taken a number of major energy efficiency steps, which we will believe will put the US on a significantly more efficient energy path going forward. And on top of all that, this past fall, Congress passed the bipartisan infrastructure law, which appropriates $62 billion at the DOE alone towards energy efficiency and other clean energy investments, which will provide tremendous liftoff to a lot of efforts. You know, so I do believe we're all here today because energy efficiency remains the #1 solution in its ability to reduce costs, particularly for those most burdened, while also creating quality jobs and reducing carbon pollution. And of course, it's critical to modernizing our infrastructure and building a more competitive economy. So just using the ACEEE framework, let me share some progress that we are making. First, a look at buildings. You know, here in this country, they use about 40% of the nation's energy. So building efficiency is essential to our goals. You know, this administration is currently supporting the largest RD&D funding ever at the department with a broad portfolio of work on electric, dynamic, and smart products and materials. We're also at the department helping lock in energy savings through the building energy codes in this country, which, as we know, offer consumers billions in savings on bills. You know, just this past summer, DOE here completed its formal work on the most modern model energy codes in the country, which helps kick off the state and local code adoption processes here. And the department started sharing for the first time a new set of stretch code options to help states and local governments go even further. And now with this bipartisan infrastructure law funding, we're in the position to provide more than $200 million in funding to states and local governments to help in these updating and advanced efforts. We're also doing our work to catch up on our job to establish national minimum energy conservation standards for appliances. These standards are estimated to save consumers nearly $2 trillion by 2030. You know, while our predecessors here at the department left us with quite a backlog of work, as well as some knots to untie, we are making real progress. Just last week, 2 important proposed standards were released for public comment, and the administration announced its intentions to finalize more than 100 actions by the end of 2022. Actions estimated to deliver about $100 in annual energy savings to every household in America. We also are addressing the nation's older existing buildings in other ways. Partnerships with state and local governments on building performance standards, and again, new bipartisan infra law funding of about probably $4.5 billion once some of the program designs settle out in loans, grants, and of course, low income weatherization. This effort now being funded at the federal level at a level almost 10 times recent annual funding levels. And our president, our administration continues to work on an even more ambitious legislative package with Congress that could bring billions more in incentives to help families retrofit their homes. So really exciting efforts on the buildings front. Now, our industries also, of course, are a leading consumer of energy. Here again, the administration is supporting strong RD&D funding with the department focused on ways to decarbonize energy intensive and high greenhouse gas industries and advance smart data-driven manufacturing and minimizing material waste. Here, the bipartisan infrastructure law provides about $1 billion to assist small and medium manufacturers in energy efficiency upgrades and retoolings, provisions we're excited to put to work. And we also continue to challenge our public and private sectors to lead across their enterprises through our Better Buildings and Better Plants programs, with over 1,000 organizations working in partnership with us. And there are some more incentives being pursued with Congress for manufacturing improvements. So as we turn to take a look at transportation, here there's also some very exciting progress. The administration announced last week new fuel economy standards for passenger cars and light duty trucks, standards on the order of 49 miles per gallon for model year 2026, the strongest cost savings and fuel efficiency standards to date, and increasing the estimated fleet-wide average here in this country by nearly 10 miles per gallon by 2026. We look at these standards as encouraging industry to keep making improvements on the internal combustion engine vehicles, while they also keep moving into electric vehicles, building upon the announcements of nearly all auto manufacturers at this point on new electric vehicle models. And here, the department is working in a first of a kind arrangement, a joint office with our Department of Transportation to help states deploy billions of dollars in electric vehicle charging stations to help accelerate this transition. And again, our president continues to work with Congress on a robust package of incentives to help Americans accelerate this transition to electric vehicles. All of this, of course, helping make big progress on energy independence and reducing reliance on fossil fuels. And as the president has said, the only true independence from these volatile oil markets and geopolitics, which are really top of mind these days. I do want to emphasize that across all of our work, we're very focused on a clean energy economy that benefits all Americans. Here, DOE has stood up an Office of Energy Justice to oversee these efforts. And we are working to ensure that 40% of overall benefits of our investments are delivered to disadvantaged communities, those that have experienced the heavy burdens of the impacts of our fossil dependence, as well as coal and other communities in transition. And of course, we're really working to make the whole economy more equitable by focusing on not just job creation, but good jobs with good wages and benefits. So sort of bringing my remarks to an end here, I think our collective efforts on energy efficiency truly are critical to combat climate change and create a more prosperous clean energy economy for all. We see these as very exciting times for energy efficiency, and certainly here at the department, we have a newly aligned DOE to deliver on these times with this new Office of Infrastructure, really leaning in on late stage, large scale demos and helping spur liftoff on deployments and programs that can ramp up our community engagement, address our aging grid, and secure clean energy supply chains in support of all the things we need to do here. So we're very much looking forward to the tremendous improvements we can make and looking forward to the additional progress a successful reconciliation package could also bring. So again, congratulations to all the leading countries here, and thanks for the opportunity, Steve.
Okay, thank you very much, Kathleen. We're now going to proceed to questions, and I'm going to go through the chat and ask a few of the ones that I thought might be particularly useful for many people. First question, DDA. You mentioned a 330 kilowatt hour per meter squared target. The question is that for all residential buildings or only for rental properties?
It's first is progress. This is for landlords and owners. What
Okay.
is new? It's that it's not only for owners and owners, it's also for landlords. And but it's difficult to say if it will work or not, because we are just starting that scheme, and I don't have ex post evaluation to really say if it will work or not. But normally, since it's an obligation, it should work in principle. But the idea is to enlarge the scope. Step by step, we go from owners to landlords, and so this is the idea, to enlarge the scope of the target audience.
Okay. Another question is, I believe you said, Didier, that the success in Europe is driven both by European Union policies and individual country policies. In the US, we have, according to this person, we do have some state and local policies, but not as much national policies. Does anyone have any thoughts about how the US can increase their ambition and have this dual strategy work better? I don't know if any.
I just want to, why I mentioned that issue is that you don't know, but I was in the French delegation on COP, climate change, from 15 years. And always, since we're in US, the US say we want to do what we want when we want. And we don't believe in coordinated policies. And the European example show exactly the opposite. And for instance, we are working in Latin America, or we are working in a Maghreb country to reflect on labels, coordinated labels or standards, because the market, it's a huge, you cannot implement a label or a standard if you are a small country. So the most important argument here is you need to have coordinated policies. This is not the way of thinking of some of the countries around the table. So this is one of my message. Go for coordinated policies.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going through and give me a second. Sorry,
Go ahead.
here's another question. Can anybody share research results on how large energy users and large greenhouse gas emissions emitters in the private sector react to public policies and processes? What policies are more likely to get buy-in and useful actions from the private sector rather than pushback? Anybody
Well-
want to take this?
Well, certainly we've had great success with voluntary agreement type approaches where you have a win-win. And certainly we know that energy efficiency keeps growing back, right, with our large industrial users. And it is interesting through these voluntary programs that you also see, that companies of various intensities keep having substantial opportunities to invest and improve and get the great paybacks that are there to be gotten. So there they get to chart their own path a little bit, but really contribute quite substantially to overall efficiency improvements in the sector.
Okay, thank you. Another question is, DDA mentioned sufficiency policies. And he implied that it was linked to a decrease in economy-wide energy consumption in France. He asked, did I hear that correctly?
There are already some sufficiency policy in some countries. It's not new. Even during the Second World War, there was already some sufficiency policies. What is new is the game is that we will not reach the CO2 target in 2050 with only the technology and only through energy efficiency and carbon storage. We have to go beyond that to change our behavior and infrastructure. So it means to go to sufficiency. And sufficiency is a new concept, particularly supported by academics and NGOs. And my message is that we will have to go to sufficiency. So it means to have more obligation, a cap on mileage per year, a cap on the number of days for eating. So it's very strong. It will be more collaborative, like car sharing. But my message is that the government should start to think about policies on sufficiency, and that it's not only a debate between ONG and NGOs and academics. It's time for the government to think about policies. This is my message. Now it's another workshop, and we have at ECEE, for instance, we have some workshop on how to implement energy efficiency policies. But this is my message. Institutions should embark on reflecting on sufficiency.
One other clarifying question about the 330 kilowatt hours per meter square in France. Is that primary energy, meaning it includes losses at the power plant, or is it just site energy?
So I wrote primary energy, but I don't know how they will control that. I understand how to measure final demand. I don't know how to measure the primary demand. So this is something personally I don't really understand how it will work. But as it was written here, in terms of primary energy, but this is a classic important debate that we have from the last 30 years. Do we have to think about final energy or primary energy when we are talking about energy efficiency? And I understand if you are a government that you are thinking about energy efficiency in terms of primary terms. But as an end user, I would think we have to, or like an agency like us, I am in favor of discussing in terms of final demand, or final energy. So this is a classic debate, and it's still open, and it will be always open. It depends on the type of stakeholders.
Okay. Well, thank you to all of our speakers in this session, Sakarika, DDA, and Kathleen. I know there's far more questions than we're able to answer. So if people have a few minutes and want to look at the chat and can respond, that would be great. But we're now going to take a couple of minute break. But after this, at 11:05, we will begin 2 breakout sessions. One on national efforts, which will highlight cross-sectoral energy efficiency policies and best practices from Germany and China. They'll provide an overview of energy efficiency's role in phasing out refrigerants, as well as actions to meet the Kigali Amendment. Our buildings breakout will discuss, among other topics, energy saving policies in the Netherlands, building performance standards in Europe, and the U.S. Department of Energy's cold climate heat pump technology challenge. So you can sort yourself into the breakout. You should be able to select which one you want, and we will begin these at 11:05 Eastern time, giving people time to refresh their coffee or whatever they need to do. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you all in now 4 minutes.